I never expected a broken boy would play his heart out and change my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a day like any other, the sun's golden rays bathing the playground in warmth, but something felt off, an electric tension lingered in the air. I watched from a distance, my heart pounding, as kids laughed and played. But in the corner, near the rusted swing set, stood a boy. He was different. His right shoe, scuffed and torn, barely clung to his foot. He was thin, almost fragile, like he might shatter if touched. His clothes were old, colors faded, as if they had lived lifetimes in someone else's story. The strangest part? His eyes. They were the color of storm clouds, swirling with a tempest of sadness and something deeper and unexplainable hope. Every day, I saw him, alone. He would watch the other kids. I wanted to approach him, to ask what weighed on his shoulders, but fear gripped me. What if he didn't want to talk? What if I didn't know the words? My thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of laughter. A group of boys jostled past me, their joy piercing the tension. And then, he began to sing. The melody was haunting, it wrapped around me like a ghost. I froze. The boy stepped forward, his voice clear and raw, a fragile tremor underlined every note. Each word tugged at something deep inside me, like a string pulling me closer. I held my breath, entranced. It felt like a secret he was unveiling, a piece of his heart laid bare. You could see the other kids stop. Their laughter faded, replaced by quiet confusion. They whispered among themselves, the words brushing against me like the rustle of leaves. What's wrong with him? Why is he singing? But I felt something else, an urgency in his voice that echoed through the silence. Suddenly, the boy stumbled. His foot caught on the uneven ground, and as he fell, gasps erupted around us. I felt the panic rise like bile in my throat. My body went tense. I wanted to run to him. But I stayed frozen, heart racing. How could someone so broken bring such beauty? Then a girl, braver than the rest, rushed to him. She offered her hand, while another boy threw a condescending glance, muttering something about freaks. Yet, in that moment, the world blurred around me. All I saw was the boy's bewildered expression, caught in something between fear and relief. His hand shook as he accepted the girl's offer. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice breaking through my daze. He hesitated, like a wave pulling back, revealing a hidden shore of vulnerability. And then, just as he opened his mouth to respond, the unexpected happened. A loud crack split the air. Like thunder, it vibrated through us. My heart dropped. The swing set, rusted and ancient, collapsed, sending splintered wood flying. Chaos erupted. Screams pierced the atmosphere as everyone scattered. My breath hitched, choking on the panic that flooded the playground. The boy was still standing there, eyes wide, fear slapped across his face, and my heart sank. Was he hurt? And in that moment, one question ricocheted in my mind. Could I ever really get close to this boy who sang so beautifully and now stood in the shadow of disaster? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. After the dust settled around the playground, the desperate cries and frantic scuffling drowned out my thoughts. I was still staring at the boy, the way his eyes widened in disbelief, his fragile frame trembling amidst the chaos. People rushed around us, but I couldn't move. All I could think about was him, the boy who sang with a voice like a wounded bird, now caught in the storm of fear. As if drawn by an invisible thread, I took a hesitant step towards him. The world blurred, leaving just the two of us in that moment. I fought back the rising tide of my own terror. What if he was hurt? Or worse, what if he thought I had left him behind just like everyone else? My heart raced as I closed the distance, determined to bridge that fragile gap. Are you okay? I asked, my voice a shaky whisper, breaking through the haze of confusion. He gazed at me, and for a heartbeat, it felt like we were the only ones left in this fractured world. I didn't mean to, he stammered, his voice cracking like glass, his hands clenched into trembling fists. I just wanted to. His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dreams and a vulnerability that made my chest ache. Before he could finish, another Childa boy with tousled hair and a penchant for mischief darted up to us, his eyes slightly wild. What happened? Was it you? Did you break the swing? The accusation dripped with cruelty, mingling with the dust that swirled around us. That I bristled at the words, instinctively stepping closer to the boy. No. He was only singing. He didn't do anything wrong. My voice came out stronger than I felt, a thread of solidarity weaving between us. I didn't know this boy's name, but I felt every ounce of the pressure on him like a suffocating blanket. The boy turned his stormy eyes towards me, full of confusion and a flicker of appreciation. Just then, a soft hand landed on my shoulder. I glanced over to see the girl who had reached for him earlier. Her face was pale but fierce. Let's just let him breathe, all right? She stood firmly, tossing glances at the other children who had begun to gather again. In that instant, compassion glimmered amidst the chaos. I could see it coloring the edges of their fear. As few as we were, the boy who sang, and this brave girl stood our ground. For a moment it was as if the world outside our small circle vanished entirely, leaving behind a raw, unmediated connection that intertwined our fates, but just as hope began to bloom, the sharp crack of authority broke through. A teacher raced onto the scene, her face a storm of worry. What happened here? Everyone needs to step back. Clear the playground, the spell shattered. As the other kids dispersed, I wanted to pull the boy away, to protect him from those invading eyes that sought to label him as different, as broken. But he stood rooted in place, frozen by the fear of being seen. I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his, feeling the warmth of his skin against the rising chill of my own uncertainty. That I am sorry, he whispered, the weight of the world lying heavily on his shoulders. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to be seen, to be heard. His confession sent a pang through me, a cold rush of reality that clawed at my heart. What had I done? Had I encouraged him to open up only to push him further into the darkness filled with those who would never understand? The teacher's voice echoed sharply in the distance. Everyone needs to go home now. We'll deal with this tomorrow. No one gets to stay. Panic surged again as the reality of dismissal swept through the crowd, disbanding our small alliance. I turned to the boy, desperate to reassure him, but he was pulling his hand away, his expression collapsing into something I recognized far too well: abandonment. Don't go, please, I pleaded, but he was already stepping back, retreating into the shadows of the collapsing numbers. In that moment of despair, a flicker of hope caught my attention. The girl was watching us, her gaze fierce and protective. Hey! She called out, moving swiftly. You don't have to leave. You can come with us. Just take a step forward. You don't have to be alone. The boy paused, caught between the sanctuary she offered and the rising tide of uncertainty. And just as I thought he might take that step, his stormy eyes darted around, and then something shifted. I can't. I don't belong here, he said, his voice trembling like a whisper amidst the wind. In that split second, it felt like a door was slamming shut, a sadness that reverberated through the air, a promise of isolation echoing in the cracks between us. He turned and began to retreat, shadowed and lost, dissolving into anonymity once again. Wait. What's your name? The words left my mouth before I could stop them, a desperate tether trying to hold on as he faded from sight, but there was no answer, only silence. Turning back to the girl, I searched for answers in her steadfast gaze. What do we do now? She shook her head, her own eyes glistening. We find him. We have to. But even as she spoke, dread crept in like a dark whisper, echoing a painful question. What if he didn't want to be found? It was at that moment that an explosion of sound echoed from across the playground. A dark figure loomed in the distance, and the air shifted again, charged with a different kind of uncertainty. This was only the beginning. I stood frozen for a moment, watching the dark figure grow closer. Panic churned in my stomach as the kids around me began to scatter again, their laughter and shouts morphing into a cacophony of fear. Something about their swift movements felt ominous, as if an unseen predator had come to claim its territory. "Come on," the girl urged, tugging at my sleeve. "We need to go." I resisted for a heartbeat longer, desperately searching for a glimpse of the boy who had vanished like smoke into the night. My chest felt heavy with the weight of things unsaid, but I could no longer stand by. Leaving the playground, leaving him felt like abandoning a piece of myself. But I followed her, our footsteps frantic and unsteady as we fled the chaos. "Where do you think he went?" I asked, glancing back over my shoulder. My heart sank as the shadows loomed larger, swallowing more of the evening light. "I don't know," she admitted, shaking her head, frustration etching lines across her forehead. "But we can't just leave it like this. He was hurting, and I cut her off. I should have said something more, something to make him stay. He needed someone." The guilt was crushing, a leaden weight pulling me under as I replayed our last moment together. The girl wrapped her arms around herself, looking lost. "It's not your fault. He was brave. I wish we could reach him somehow." We stepped out of the playground, the streetlight casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. I felt the chill seep through my skin, and it had nothing to do with the autumn air. My mind moved in circles, questions flaring up like fireflies in the encroaching darkness. What drew us together, and why did it feel like such a tight-knit connection? We wandered down the road, quiet for a few moments, trying to breathe the fractured calm. Just then, a flicker of motion caught my eye, something bright and vibrant against the dull gray of the pavement. A tattered piece of paper, crumpled and stained, fluttered about in the wind. I bent to scoop it up, and the moment I opened it, my breath hitched. It was a drawing, detailed and expressive, a boy with a wide smile, arms outstretched to a sky filled with stars. The likeness was undeniable. It was the boy from earlier, the boy whose throat had been filled with sorrows too heavy to sing. "Look," I whispered, holding it up to the girl. "He drew this. He wasn't just lost." Her expression softened, though the sadness lingered. "It's beautiful." There was reverence in her voice, a trace of something deeper. "Maybe he left it behind on purpose," I suggested, an ember of hope igniting in my chest. "A sign. He was telling us something that I think he just wanted to be understood." She sighed, glancing at the ground as if searching for clues in the cracks. "He felt invisible, and now he's gone again." As we continued down the street, the weight of the drawing began to settle over us like a blanket, a protective shroud weaving memories and shared experience. The sun dipped lower, casting fiery colors across the evening sky, but it went unnoticed by my distracted thoughts. "That we have to show someone," I said, determination filling my voice. "This can't end like it did. We have to reach him. He needs to know he matters." But just as the words left my mouth, a rustling sound broke the stillness around us. A branch snapped in the distance, followed by hurried footsteps. The girl and I exchanged a quick glance, and instinctively, we pressed ourselves against the side of a nearby building, hearts pounding in sync with the rhythm of uncertainty. "Just stay quiet," she whispered, her eyes widening. Moments dragged until a boy emerged from around the corner, different from the one we had lost. He stumbled into view, one of the boys from the playground, breathless and wild-eyed. "They're looking for him," he panted, glancing nervously over his shoulder, as if he feared he would be captured any moment. "The teacher. The other kids, they're saying he ran away." My heart sank. "The boy with the voice. You mean he left?" "No. He got scared. They were laughing and calling him names, and he just took off." He swallowed hard. I don't think he knew where he was going. My pulse raced as dread washed over me. "Which way?" I demanded. "Towards the woods," he replied, pointing with shaking fingers. "I saw him disappear that way," without thinking, I turned and ran, the adrenaline pumping through my veins like wildfire. The woods loomed dark and forbidding, but the thought of the boy alone, lost among the trees, urged me forward with renewed urgency. Wait. The girl called after me, her voice trailing. We can't keep running blind. We need a plan, but there was no stopping now. I forced my legs to push harder, fueled by fear and desperation. The darkness swallowed the path before me, twisting branches reaching out like hands, and I barely heard the girl's footsteps behind me. Please, where are you? I gasped into the rapidly encroaching night, praying he could hear me. But as I plunged deeper into the woods, uncertainty gnawed at me. Was I chasing a shadow? The boy was seeking something, but what would happen when we finally found him? Suddenly, the air shifted with a sound that shattered the stillness. A haunting melody floated through the trees, weaving between the branches, a voice trembling and raw. It resonated with urgency, and for a breathless moment, I felt both relief and panic wash over me. It was him. As I drew closer, the notes wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, yet I hesitated. The voice implored, rising and falling like waves against the shore, begging to be understood, and just as I was about to step into the clearing, a shadow blocked my path. A figure stepping from behind a tree, shrouded in darkness that felt impossibly heavy, each breath a threat echoing through the woods. Who are you? A voice snarled, and the harmonious song stumbled into silence. I froze as dread enveloped me. I knew deep down that this was no ordinary encounter, but I had already committed to the search, and the journey demanded everything of me. Heart racing, I prepared for what lay ahead. Uncertainty loomed like a storm, and I could feel the storm brewing inside me, threatening to erupt. We were on the brink of discovering so much more than we'd anticipated. The figure stepped into the burst of moonlight that struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above, revealing a boy tall for his age, with a defiant glare that could launch arrows. His clothes were old and frayed, and his hair stuck up in wild tufts as if he'd been running his fingers through it in frustration. Are you with them? He demanded, eyes blazing. The ones who made him run? I swear, if you're here to hurt him, no. I exclaimed, taking a subconscious step back, breath catching in my throat. We're looking for him. We want to help. His stance softened, an ember of uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but the suspicion remained. Help? You don't even know what he's feeling, what it's like to be hunted for being different. Maybe not, I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. But we know he needs someone. I saw his drawing. He wants to be heard. The boy paused, considering my words as silence hung heavily in the air. A brief moment where we stood on equal ground, two souls seeking refuge, even in the face of fear. Artists, he muttered, almost like a bitter truth. They're always trying to make sense of what doesn't fit. But where does that leave us? The girl caught up to me, her breath hitching as she took in the scene. He won't come back if we don't show him he's not alone, she said softly, reaching out as if to bridge the gap between us. Why should I trust you? The boy grumbled, crossing his arms defiantly. Because maybe we're more alike than you think. I stepped closer, my voice low and sincere. I've felt what it's like to be invisible, to have a piece of myself slip away when no one seems to care. Don't you want to fight that? His gaze flickered momentarily to the ground, and I could see the battle beneath his tough exterior, a longing for connection draped in layers of hurt. Finally, he sighed, and the hard lines of his jaw softened ever so slightly. Fine. But if any of you are lying, you'll make sure you regret it. We ventured deeper into the woods as the haunting melody that once guided my footsteps faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the crunch of twigs underfoot. With each moment that passed, dread coiled tightly around my chest. If the boy we sought was truly lost, he might be too far gone for us to bring back. Why did you care so much? The girl asked me quietly, glancing sideways as we walked. I don't know, I admitted honestly, feelings of guilt and determination swirling within me. It's like I see him in me. And I wish someone had stepped in when I needed it the most. We can't leave him behind. Her expression softened, and we continued, our shared resolve binding us together despite the churning emotions threatening to tear us apart. As we approached the clearing, the atmosphere shifted heavy with a mixture of despair and something indefinable, like the air before a storm. And suddenly, I could hear it again, a voice drifting through the trees, more sorrowful and poignant than I remembered, and it aimed directly for my heart. "Please," it wailed, raw and tender, "if anyone is out there, I just want to be good enough." Electricity surged through me as I propelled forward, thinking that perhaps we had finally stumbled upon him. My pulse thundered in my ears, quickening with anticipation and fear. But then, just as we entered the clearing, the boy leaped into view. His eyes were wide, filled with something like fright or desperation, but he wasn't alone. Two figures stood behind him, older boys, menacing in their shadows, laughing cruelly as they cornered him like a hunted animal. Their voices cut like glass as they taunted, "What's wrong, little artist? Can't find your words? Go away!" cried the boy, fists balled at his sides, but those small hands trembled, betraying how trapped he truly felt. "Come on. Just sing for us," they laughed, enjoying the power they wielded as they encroached on him further. In that moment, it felt as if time stopped. The world around me faded into a haze, leaving only the palpable weight of fear and compassion. "Stop! Leave him alone!" I shouted, stepping into the clearing, adrenaline coursing through my veins as my heart roared a battle cry. The older boys turned, eyes narrowing in disbelief before they burst into mocking laughter. "Who do you think you are?" But behind me, I felt our collective strength mount, the girl stepping up beside me, the other boy backing me, the three of us forming a barrier between the boy in distress and the cruelty circling like vultures. "That I am someone who believes he deserves to be heard," I declared, throwing my words into the air like a lifeline. "And you will never take that away from him." The laughter faltered, uncertainty blooming in their eyes as they hovered on the brink of confusion. Just then, the boy we aimed to save grew quiet, watching us with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Was there finally a way out? But just as the tension hung heavy, a loud crack echoed through the clearing, slicing through the atmosphere as one of the bullies pushed past me, lunging for the boy. "You think you can save him?" Everything erupted, a rush of chaos, my instincts screaming. I surged forward just as the darkness threatened to seize him again, bracing myself for the impact. But in that swirling moment, something broke loose within us. If the combined energy of all that had passed fueled a light ready to shine, even against the night. I caught a glimpse of the boy's expression, fear fading into something that looked dangerously close to belief. And just then, the echo of a haunting melody broke through the air one last time, leaving me with an unsettling realization that perhaps in pursuit of reconciling our own shadows, we'd inadvertently stumbled into a fight much larger than ourselves. Would we drown in the darkness, or was there still a way to bring back the voices we had fought so hard to save? A sense of urgency surged through me. Our journey had just begun. The clearing felt alive with tension, the air thick as the last remnants of twilight painted the edges of the forest in a bruised, uncertain light. I could almost taste the dread permeating the moment, the balance hanging delicately between hope and despair. "Get away from him!" I shouted, though my voice trembled with all the strength I could muster. The confidence I forced into the words felt like a fragile shield, one that could shatter at the slightest hint of violence. The older boys exchanged glances, their laughter receding slightly, uncertainty creeping in as they surveyed the three of us standing between them and the boy they treated as if he were less than human. "Who do you think you are?" One of them sneered, taking a step forward as if to reclaim the power he thought was his. "A bunch of wannabe heroes? You're wasting your breath." "Enough of this." The boy we'd come to save interjected suddenly, his small voice rising above the chaos, a bitter crack echoing within the fear. "You don't understand. You can't break me any further." Surprise momentarily washed over the bullies, the faint glimmer of respect tainted with disbelief. Could it be that they were facing someone who dared to push back? I glanced sideways at the girl beside me, who was staring wide-eyed at the scene unfolding. I could see her heart clenching, caught between wanting to protect this boy and the natural instinct to run. "We can't let them win," I whispered, clenching my fists tighter, feeling the resolve build within me, like a flickering flame defying the darkness. The leader of the bullies gestured dismissively, but I noticed the way his bravado had cracked, as if he felt the weight of responsibility for the boy's courage. It was no longer just us against them, it was an awakening within the boy they had tormented that made them hesitate. Then sing for us. He challenged, his voice dripping with false bravado, as if reducing the boy's artistry to mere entertainment could strip him of his power. Prove you haven't lost your voice. The boy took a shuddering breath, every inch of him trembling as he faced his accuser. You want to hear me? You really want to understand what it's like to feel this kind of pain? The air shifted around us as he began to speak, his voice a shaky thread weaving through the malicious laughter. I used to believe I couldn't escape. I thought I had to blend into shadows, pretend my art didn't exist. His eyes roamed the faces around him, searching for validation amid the fear. But you don't get to decide who I am. I could see his defiance igniting a spark of something in the crowd. The surrounding trees almost leaned in, anticipating his next move. Hope flared in my chest, battling the inevitable fear that threatened to swallow me whole if this confrontation turned sour. Sensing the rising tide, I stepped closer to the boy, willing him to know he wasn't alone. You can't be afraid of who you are, not anymore. The sincerity of my voice cut through the fog of hostility like a knife. The girl beside me added courage to my plea. Your art is your voice. Let it rise above their shadows. Show them what they fear. Against the backdrop of the swirling tension, the boy took a deep breath, and suddenly the world around us quieted, a fragile calm settling over the clearing like a blanket. Even the bullies paused, caught off guard by the shift that he started softly, the notes spilling from him like droplets of rain, each word a mosaic of emotions poured into melody. I was lost in a forest of doubt, searching for my home, yearning for moments that made me feel whole. His voice trembled, echoed by the trees around us, enveloping the clearing in something transcendent. The helplessness that had clung to him seemed to lift, buoyed by the rawness of his honesty. With every lyric, I felt unsettling familiarity, a connection forged through shared pain. It struck me that we were more than mere spectators, we were participants in a larger narrative where art had power, where vulnerability could topple tyranny. But just as the boy's melody began to consume the clearing, the lead bully's expression contorted into anger. Shut up. You think that matters? You think they care about your stupid music? In that moment, as the boy poured his heart into every note, I noticed a slight falter in the bully's demeanor. The laughter faded, replaced by an uncertainty that painted his features. But it was fleeting, as he swung into action, lunging towards the boy to silence him once and for all. Before I could react, I felt the girl's hand grip my arm tightly, forcing me to meet her gaze. We have to save him. And just like that, the fragile moment shattered into chaos once more. My instincts kicked in, I charged forward, desperate to protect the boy who had bravely pushed back against his captors. But just as I reached him, time seemed to slow. An unexpected explosion of energy erupted from the boy, a wave of light radiating outward that sent our attacker stumbling back as if struck by an unseen force. A realization washed over me, this was his power, the magic of his artistry reclaiming both his voice and agency. Yet even as the tide turned, an ominous dread loomed over us, echoing in the shadows. Just as quickly as the moment had erupted, it shifted. The boy's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place, a depth of emotion that spoke of untold stories left woven within him. As if one brush with true freedom hadn't been enough, the remaining bullies retreated, staring at the boy not merely as prey, but as something unexplainable and unsettling, a reminder of everything they would never comprehend. But as he turned to us, his expression transformed, revealing a flicker of despair mingled with a new weight that seemed to settle across his shoulders. What if they come back? Somewhere in that moment, beneath the murmurs of reassurance we conveyed, I understood the urgency etched in his voice. This battle might have been momentarily won, but the war raged on, deeper and more insidious than any of us could have anticipated. That I inhaled sharply, the reality settling heavily in my chest. We have to be ready, I whispered, a sense of newfound determination igniting within me. For whatever comes next. And as we stood together in the aftermath of this clash, a new question hung in the air, unspoken yet tangible: would we have the strength to endure the depths of despair still to come? The shadows loomed ever closer, and together, we prepared to face them, however daunting it might be. The echoes of the boy's melody hung in the air long after the bullies had gone, lingering like a fragile thread, binding us together in an unbreakable silence. With the twilight fading into night, I could see the shadows dancing among the trees, threatening to consume the fleeting moment of courage we had conjured. The boy, now standing stiffly, his chest rising and falling with a mix of relief and lingering fear, looked at us, his eyes shimmering with uncertainty. "Do you really think they won't come back?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper, each word weaving a fragile tapestry of dread. He wrapped his arms around himself, as if he could shield his heart from the memories that threatened to close in around him once more. Before I could answer, the girl beside me stepped forward. "We'll figure it out together. No one has to face this alone," she said, her tone steady yet laced with the same unshakable worry evident in our eyes. A flicker of gratitude lit the boy's gaze. Yet, shadows haunted the corners of his expression as he took a step back, afraid to embrace the very act of hope that had danced so tantalizingly within reach a moment ago. "You don't understand. They won't just leave me alone." "Not after today, maybe not," I admitted, feeling a lump form in my throat. "But there's strength in numbers. We can prepare for whatever they throw at us next." Yet deep down, I could feel my own soundest thoughts falter at the weight of those words. We weren't just facing bullies anymore, we were confronting a darkness that had burrowed deep into this place, a suffocating sense of isolation that had threatened to choke the boy's spirit repeatedly. The night deepened, painted in shades of uncertainty, and we lingered in the forest clearing, grappling with the implications of our collective fear. Eventually, the girl broke the silence, her gaze drifting toward the star-speckled sky. "We should find a safe meeting place somewhere we can strategize, away from here. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look," I added, a plan forming slowly. But just as the hint of safety emerged, another flash of doubt crept over me. What if it's not enough? What if we fail him? The boy took a steadying breath, and despite his fear, there was an undeniable glimmer of resilience in his heart. "If we don't try, we'll never know if it could work." Confidence surged within me at his words, and I cast a glance at my friend. "What about the old barn outside of town? It's secluded and has plenty of spots to hide if they decide to come looking for us." She nodded eagerly, the suggestion igniting excitement within her. "Yes. And I heard there's an entrance nobody knows about. We can use that to keep it our secret." For a moment, a small flame of hope flickered bright, illuminating the darkness that had cloaked us. With renewed resolve, we began walking through the forest, the boy moving alongside us, his shoulders gradually untensing with every step we took away from the clearing. Yet as we approached the edge of the woods, an unsettling feeling coiled in the pit of my stomach, a whisper of dread telling me that the battle was far from over. When we reached the barn, the sight of it invoked both nostalgia and trepidation. It stood there, weathered yet resolute, like a sentinel in the night. Just as we were about to step inside, a sudden noise pierced through the heavy atmosphere, causing us to freeze. "Did you hear that?" the girl gasped, her eyes darting toward the direction of the sound. It was an echo, a low murmur thriving in the depths of the shadows that encroached upon our fragile sanctuary. With every step toward the barn, the air thickened, intertwining with the weight of uncertainty that clung to us like fog. Before we could fully react, a figure emerged from the darkness, a larger silhouette shrouded in shadow. My heart raced, fear cascading over me as the barn door creaked open wider, revealing the scene behind it. "Look who finally decided to come home," a voice called out mockingly, rich with malice. There stood the leader of the bullies, flanked by two of his friends. They had tracked us down. Our sanctuary was compromised, and a wave of panic surged within me. "Thought you could just sing your little song and everything would magically change?" he sneered, stepping closer, the light from the barn casting eerie shadows across his face. That I felt the boy by my side tense, a primal instinct screaming for him to flee. But before he could bolt, something in the man's gaze flickered, a strange mix of envy and fear. "What kind of monster are you?" he spat, his voice laced with a mix of anger and disbelief. In that moment, I realized the depth of our plight. We weren't simply fighting against his cruelty, we had unknowingly become a catalyst for something far more dangerous within them, a rift that could shatter their perception of power. As they advanced, the boy instinctively took a step forward, anchoring himself in a fierce unwavering stance. "I am more than your fear," he declared, his voice echoing through the stillness, cutting through the tension like the blade of a sword. "It's not over," one of the bullies sneered. "We're just getting started." Then, a hard pressure pressed into the air, and suddenly all eyes fell on the boy, but not from a place of hatred. No, something unsettling lingered everywhere, as if fate had set the stage for a confrontation neither side was truly ready to comprehend. Amidst the chaos, I understood it, our fight had morphed into something greater, a confrontation with the shadows that swirled within us all. Would we be able to combat not just their cruelty but the inherent fears that resided within ourselves? As the darkened echoes crescendoed and charged toward us, a chilling realization gripped my heart. Words fell heavy on my tongue as I whispered to the boy beside me, "Whatever happens, we stand together." But as their laughter spilled into the darkness, mingling with the winds, the seeds of doubt began to blossom yet again. Would our courage be enough to face not just the bullies, but the demons that awaited? Time stretched like a taut thread about to snap, and as I braced myself for what lay ahead, an unfamiliar voice called out from the depths of the barn. An unseen ally, or perhaps a foe? This was only the beginning of a journey not just of survival but understanding just how far we were willing to go. As the sound reverberated through the barn, it felt as though time came to a standstill. The mocking laughter faded, replaced by a creeping silence that enveloped us like a shroud. Every heartbeat rang in my ears as we collectively pivoted toward the entrance, drawn to the mystery of that voice, a whisper laced with uncertainty yet bursting with an undercurrent of hope. "Who's there?" the leader of the bullies barked, breaking the spell of curiosity that hung heavily in the air. He took a cautionary step forward, dragging me along with his formidable presence, my instinct repelling the urge to retreat. The shadow stirred again, and a figure, though shrouded in darkness, began to emerge from the back of the barn like a specter from a tale long forgotten. A girl stepped into the errant light that sliced through the barn's old slats, her expression remixed with sincerity and defiance. She held herself with confidence that radiated an inexplicable warmth. "What's your problem here, huh?" she asserted, her eyes locked onto the bullies with a fierceness that was unnerving. "Why don't you pick on someone who actually deserves it?" There was a moment where surprise rippled through the air, mixing with the bully's confusion. He seemed to be grappling with the audacity of her challenge, these mere words igniting a tension that beckoned for more than mere physicality. The girl was brave, she was unyielding. "You're not here to fight," the newcomer continued, drawing closer. "This isn't about you." Her piercing gaze swept over the boy beside me, and in that instant, empathy flashed like a beacon between them. "Tell me I'm wrong," she pressed, her tone losing its edge as she turned to the boy. "You just want to play your music, don't you? More than anything else you want to be free." I glanced at the boy, whose expression had transformed from defiance to confusion. The fight in him flickered like a dying flame, fought against by flurries of self-doubt. Could it be possible, amid the chaos, that someone would understand? The girl's presence invoked fierce yearning, a longing for connection so pronounced that it drowned the shadows of the barn. "Together, we can create something beautiful," she said, her voice softening. "Don't let them take that from you." At that moment, I realized she was not only defending him but also shifting the power dynamic, the fear that had gripped us all. She was showing us a path, subtly invincible amidst the toxicity, aiming to suffocate hope. A wisp of awe threaded through my heart as the boy took a tentative step forward, propelled not by the desire to fight back but by the yearning to play, to express himself through that haunting melody that had pierced the air earlier. But the boy hesitated, uncertainty clouding his features. The bullies were visibly annoyed at the disruption, unwilling to relinquish the hold they'd cultivated over him. "Is this your new friend?" The leader spat, smirking as if he were savaging a wounded animal. "What's she going to do? Sing a lullaby to us?" But the girl stood firm, undeterred by the weight of his derision. "She's not just a friend," I thought, feeling the gravity of her presence pulse around us. In that moment, I felt woven into something larger, a thread joining the three of us against the isolation that had aimed to segment our existences into mere shadows. Inspiration coursed through me, urging me to contribute to this unfolding narrative. "We're not afraid of you anymore," I heard myself declare, adamantly stepping forward, my own hesitation dissipating like morning mist. "We know who we are, and you can't take that away from us." The boy's gaze met mine, flickering with growing strength, a silent signal that somehow bound us together. Seeing him gather that strength ignited the same within me, a moment both surreal and electric. But the tension was still thick, remaining like a live wire ready to spark, and the bullies shifted aggression into motion. "Then let's see what you've got," the leader yelled, urging his companions forward as if sensing the shift in our resolve. In an inexplicable surge of bravery, the boy turned to the girl. "If I play, will you sing?" An almost desperate plea, yet blooming with hope. My heart clenched at the beauty of this moment, this chaotic mess transforming into an act of defiance. "Yes," she shouted, the gleam in her eyes igniting the space around us. And just as our plan coalesced, the boy's fingers trembling at the first strums of an impromptu song, echoing fears and dreams both pure and exquisite, the barn door trembled violently as another figure burst in. A sharp intake of breath filled the air. The newcomer stood there, eyes wide with disbelief, emotion captured like a flame, illuminating an unexpected ally stepping into the storm. "What's happening here?" My breath caught. The unexpected arrival was a twist, the girl's older brother, someone I thought had left town for good, stepping into our refuge precisely as the tensions heightened. But as shock gave way to the unfolding of this confrontation, I knew we were teetering on the brink of something monumental and perilous. With the boy clutching his guitar and the girl ready to make her stand, I felt the overwhelming need to prepare for the unraveling storm that awaited us. Hope clashed feverishly with fear as we stood there collectively, united against everything the world had weaved against us. Would it be enough? The air grew thick with anticipation, charged with the electric hum of defiance and fraught emotions. The barn seemed to hold its breath, caught between weeping shadows and flickering flames of hope. As the girl's brother stood at the entrance, confusion etched across his face, I felt all eyes spiraling towards him, each heartbeat another question that lingered unasked. "What are you doing here, Jeremy?" the girl pressed, her voice quivering with a blend of relief and fear. "You weren't supposed to come back." "Things got complicated," he managed, his voice husky. He pushed a hand through his dark, disheveled hair, and for a moment he appeared just as confused by the scene as I did. "What's going on? Who are these? Does it matter?" The leader cut in, a taunting glint in his eyes as he advanced, relishing the tension. "Looks like we've got our own little concert in the works. Let's see how it goes." The boy, still clutching his guitar as if it were a lifeline, exchanged a quick glance with the girl, and for the briefest moment, I could see their childhood flickering in the depths of their eyes. But the moment was short-lived, consumed by the swirling chaos. "Play," I urged the boy, allowing every bit of conviction I had to flow into the space between us. The air around him shimmered with potential, and I clung to that spark fiercely. "Just go for it. We're with you." He took a deep breath, eyes darting to his sister and then back at the brother bullies edging closer, the tension building like a taut string ready to snap. "Okay," he whispered, his voice steadier than he felt. He pressed his fingers against the strings and let the notes emerge, tentative yet hauntingly beautiful, filling the barn with an ethereal echo of longing that transcended our fears. As he played, the girl stepped forward, her heart evidently racing. She started to sing, her voice rising above the strumming, a delicate balance of robust defiance and vulnerability that wove itself into the fabric of his melodies. My chest swelled as their harmonies entwined, the music acting as a balm against the cruelty that surrounded us. For a heartbeat, the bullies faltered, their bravado quaking a little under the weight of this spontaneous artistry. Jeremy, standing witness to the unfolding lives of the two young souls before him, lowered his guard slightly. But that moment was fleeting, the leader scoffed, a snicker escaping his lips as he motioned to his gang. "Seriously? You think this is going to save you?" He sneered before suddenly lunging forward, breaking the spell of music with a decisiveness that sent ripples of fear through us. "Incredible." He spat, voice dripping with derision just as he lunged for the guitar. But in that moment of chaos, the song flooded into every corner of the barn, almost as if echoing the challenges that had brought us here, the pain, the solitude, the hope we had desperately gripped. "Keep playing. I shouted, my own fears surfacing but drowned out by the melody. Don't stop. With every pluck of a string, he seemed to tap deeper into that raw well of emotion, his fingers moving like a wild thing against the backdrop of encroaching darkness. The girl sang louder, her voice rising defiantly against the sneers. I could almost see the fear dissipating, succumbing to the purity of their creation. It was a declaration of who they were and what they believed they could be. But just as I was about to believe we could transcend this struggle, Jeremy rushed forward, throwing himself into the fray. Stop! He shouted, his body blocking the bully's path with unexpected ferocity. Who do you think you are? The leader scoffed, but there was something more in Jeremy's gaze, fury mingling with fear, a brother's instinct unwilling to yield as protective instincts ignited. No one moved, no one spoke. Silence enveloped the barn again, broken only by the trembling notes of the guitar that still clamored to be heard, the boy holding on to this fragile array of connections with all his might. I can't let you do this, Jeremy spoke, quieter now, conflict boiling in his eyes as he searched for understanding in his sisters. You don't get what they've gone through, what you've put them through. Suddenly the world around us jolted, the truth hitting harder than the cruelest blows. Each moment stretched, akin to the yearning chords that lingered between us, creating a friction demanding resolution. Jeremy. The girl whispered, fear giving way to an emotional surge even I could feel from where I stood. Her brother was awake. His presence was more than just an ally, it was a mosaic of memories wrapped in the promise of protection, shrouded in the knowledge of a history we scarcely understood. It was then I saw his leader's smirk twisted into a mask of anger, desperately clinging to his fragility, sensing the cracks. You want to protect them now? He spat, eyes narrowing with malevolence. What kind of brother are you? In that moment, infinity stretched before us. What was at stake suddenly anchored to something much deeper than any of us realized, each of us on this precipice balancing the hopes of our futures against a past laden with pain, and just as the tension crackled through the air, an unexpected voice from the shadows broke the spell one final time. You all need to leave now. The third figure, an elder I hadn't noticed before, stepped forward, demeanor commanding with an authority that shifted the energy in the barn. I won't let this turn into something ugly. It was a shocking revelation, a teacher from our past who had seen the worst and the best of our community, a figure I thought had long faded from these memories, now stepping into the light as the urgent pulse of harmony threatened to split apart at the seams. As silence fell like a fog, fading echoes resonated of a bittersweet truth. Would this moment bind us together, or would it unravel as the chaos of confrontation descended upon us once more? And I wondered, with a heart full of uncertainty, if the threads of hope spun in that barn would weave into something that could withstand even the harshest storms to come. The elder's voice hung in the air, a clarion call that pierced through the cacophony of fear and desperation. As the tension in the barn thickened, Jeremy's posture shifted from defiant to unsure, confusion flickering in his eyes as he regarded the unexpected arrival. Mr. Talbot? He murmured, recognition sparking, though overshadowed by the still festering conflict. Yes, Jeremy. It's time for you to reconsider what you're doing here, Mr. Talbot said, his voice steady and authoritative. The leader of the bullies scoffed, and in that moment, I could feel the world fracture as the lines of division grew stark. Suddenly, the barn became a divided stage. It was us against them, each side holding tightly to their sense of righteousness. Why should we listen to you? The leader challenged, adopting an exaggerated stance, arms crossed defiantly. You think they're worth saving? His mockery slithered through the air, attempting to sink back into our hearts the fear we had strived so desperately to shake off. Their children, Mr. Talbot replied evenly, moving closer to Jeremy and the girl. Don't let the ugly things you see dictate how you act. This isn't who you are. Jeremy, caught in the middle, glanced back at his sister, who was watching him with wide, pleading eyes. The desperation in her gaze matched the urgency in my own heart, whispering unspoken words that seemed to thread through the tension lingering like shadows. Instead of confidence, uncertainty washed over Jeremy, a tempest of emotions crashing into one another. Why did you even come back, Jeremy? The girl whispered, her voice breaking through the static of the moment, laced with disbelief. You didn't have to. You were just supposed to be gone. I had to, he replied, his voice thick with emotion as he locked eyes with her. "I couldn't just leave you here." The sincerity behind his words seemed to fracture the hardened exterior of the leader for a fleeting instant. But then the moment vanished, replaced by resentment and bitterness swirling in the very fabric of the air between us. "Cute reunion," the bully snapped, anger marbling his features. "You think that makes any difference? Those two are nothing, no one cares what happens to them." As the leader directed his venom toward us, the sound of the guitar began to fade, the boy shifting his grip as doubt threatened to seep into his confidence. "Don't stop playing," I urged him, each word a push against that tide of negativity. "You have to fight through this." As if propelled by my words, his fingers found a rhythm again, a delicate yet piercing melody emerging from the silence. It reminded me of fragile flowers pushing through asphalt, beautiful yet determined in their struggle. The girl stepped forward again, her voice seamlessly intertwining with the boy's, resonating through the barn in a symphony of raw emotion. This time, there was a fierceness to her notes, an undeniable fire that soared above the chaos disrupting our sanctuary. It was a sinala moment that transcended this entire scene. Sometimes despair and hope existed within the same breath. But before I could revel in the strength of their voices mingling together, the leader captured my attention once more. "Enough!" he bellowed, his frustrations boiling over. "You think this will change anything? You don't belong here." With a wild swing of his arm, he sent a stool crashing against the wall, the sound ricocheting like a gunshot through the barn. It startled everyone, jolting us out of the sweet embrace of our music, bringing raw fear lurching to the forefront. "Enough!" Mr. Talbot repeated, stepping forward. "This needs to stop now." His tone shifted, no longer filled with the softness of reason, but a tremor of authority that brooked no argument. Yet, even as I admired his courage, I could see a flicker of doubt in his eyes, the weight of our shared history threatening to drown us all. At that moment, the true depth of our shared struggle became glaringly apparent. Each of us, standing in that old barn, trapped in the shadow of our pasts, teetering on the precipice of change or collapse. I felt the air grow heavy, and I found myself hoping against hope that we could weave ourselves together right here, right now, but that hope felt fragile, dangling like thread spun from the remnants of broken dreams. "We've fought so hard, haven't we?" I thought, my heart racing as the melody slowly died, leaving an echoing silence that filled the barn like a thick fog. Suddenly, Jeremy turned, a fierce determination anchoring him. "You don't get to dictate what we do. We have a voice, and you can't silence us." His declaration rippled through the tension, reigniting the embers of courage in all of us, a spark binding us in that moment of reckless defiance. But just as the tide seemed to shift, an unsettling sound reverberated from outside, a growl of engines, fading for only a moment before returning with an echo of hostility, relentless and penetrating. The realization hit us like ice-cold water. "More of them," I thought, heart racing. "What is that?" the girl gasped, fear clawing up her throat. In that instant, the barn doors burst open, wider than they had before, admitting a flood of light and a group of unexpected faces. Among them were more than just the town's familiar figures. Shadowy forms slipped through the threshold, threatening to engulf us all in their dark embrace. The leader of the bullies grinned maliciously, "Looks like you're not the only one who's got friends." And as the growing mob gathered outside the barn, rage mingled with fear in a storm that threatened to overwhelm everything we had fought for. My heart sank as trepidation gripped me, the realization creeping in that this was not just a battle between us and them, it was our chance to unite, and who knew what consequences loomed just ahead. Where once I had felt the warmth of fragile hope, I now felt the suffocating shroud of uncertainty closing in. As the air thickened with tension, I knew we were on the brink of something transformative. But would it be salvation, or our undoing? I stepped forward, the rhythm of my heart against my ribs matching the frantic pace of my thoughts. It would take more than words now. All the melodies we'd shared, the moments of connection, felt like flickering candles against the dark, a fragile shield amid the oncoming storm. "We don't need to do this," I called out, my voice steadying against the tide of trembling fear. "We can choose something different." The shadows shifted, eyes narrowing as hostility pulsed through the air. But in that moment, something shifted within me. An anchor took root in my heart, the understanding that we were not merely victims here. We had a voice that as if compelled by some unseen force. The boy beside me let out a shuddering breath, fingers curling tighter around the guitar's neck. What if we told our stories? His tone quivered, but the idea held weight, glimmering like a beacon in encroaching darkness. The lyric of our lives intertwined each breath, each shared moment, a symphony building against the dissonance of attack. Everyone's afraid, the girl chimed in, stepping towards the door, a fire igniting in her gaze. Maybe that's why we hurt each other. It's easier when we don't understand. Her words broke like waves against the wall of fury, resonating in a place deep within the gathering crowd. They paused, expressions faltering as her challenge transformed their anger into something far less certain. Tell us then. The leader shouted mockingly, but I could see the twitch of unease beneath his bravado. Why should we care about your little sob story? Because stories give life its meaning. I shouted, driven by conviction. We are more than the pain we carry. We are the music that breathes through every moment. Through every heartbreak, we rise. And just like that, the boy lifted his fingers back to the strings. The moment hung suspended like the most delicate of threads, and when the first note rang out, the very atmosphere shifted. The sound penetrated the walls of the barn, enticing hearts and minds alike to lustento feel. The melody unfurled like a banner, a truce captured in absurdly beautiful fragments. The girl's voice came next, weaving in a chorus of hope, her lyrics unfurling narratives of loneliness and belonging. They wove together a tapestry of dreams and fears echoing throughout the barn, resonating with a deep, heart-wrenching truth. Underneath fear, every child longs to be seen. Slowly, the crowd outside began to ease, those once hostile faces shifting, a moment of recognition breaking through the shadows. Around me, my friends sparkled with something akin to triumph. Our unity began to rewrite the wretched script of despair. The tension in my body softened. I felt embraced by possibility, kissed by the promise that our stories had power. This is what we've been denied, I thought, feeling an echo of burning love cascade through me. These stories belong to all of us. As the song reached its dizzying crescendo, I turned to see Jeremy, watching his expression shifting from protective resentment to renewed understanding. You could tell your story too, I suggested, stepping closer to bridge the distance with gentle understanding. That he took a deep breath, hesitant, each note vibrating in the atmosphere around us, a dream coaxing him closer. What do I say? He asked softly, uncertainty woven into his response. Speak your truth, offered the girl, her voice unwavering as she smiled encouragingly. Everyone deserves to be heard, Jeremy. For a moment, all eyes turned to him, waiting, vulnerable and open, and I could sense the delicate tension in the air, like the faintest whisper of potential blossoming beneath layers of hurt. Jeremy hesitated, peering into the eyes of his sister, then shifting towards the boy, whose fragile existence was somehow entwined with his own. And then it happened. Something unlocked within him. His voice broke like a flower blooming in spring, bursting forth with tales of hurt and longing, of searching for forgiveness that felt forever out of reach. That I thought my mistakes defined me, he confessed, his tone trembling yet undeniably alive. That I had to run away to escape. But maybe it's time to face the music. As he spoke, vulnerability wrapped around us, mingling with the courage woven through our song. And just like that, everything seemed to ignite again. The shadows cast by the bullies began to dissolve, replaced by something tenable and warm, the potency of shared stories shattering the stony ground between us. It awakened the sense of understanding in even the most reluctant hearts. Maybe this world can change, I thought, heart soaring, pulsing with life, and I caught the glimmer of hope in the eyes of every person surrounding us, even the bullies wavering in their animosity. The leader of the bullies remained silent, uncertainty etched into his features as the laughter faded from his friends. They looked confused, like ghosts trapped between memories of what should have been and the fervor of uncomfortable truth. As the evening wore on, amidst strumming chords and the soaring beauty of shared stories, something inside me shifted. The tension that had once gripped my heart began to dissolve, releasing shadows that had lingered far too long. Finally, as our song came to a close, the silence that followed was more profound than any conflict we had faced. It was filled with something miraculous, Primala collective breath shared among us all, and in that deeply resonant pause, the realization washed over me, a hushed revelation capturing my heart. Perhaps forgiveness was not an act but a journey we all tread together, a melody crafted from collective pain transforming into compassionate understanding. That I took a step closer to the bullies, heart pounding but resolute. You can choose differently, too, I said gently, looking them straight in the eyes, unraveling the web of fear that underpins so much pain. We're all searching for a place to belong. What if you chose to listen? The leader stared at me, weighty silence binding us for a moment in eternity. Finally, he turned towards his friends, and I could see an unshed tear tracing its way down his face, a silent affirmation that a bridge had been built where once there were only walls. As the dark night enveloped us, I realized the transformation we'd witnessed was only the beginning. We were bound by more than fear, anger, or indifference now. The music lingered in the air, bonded hearts whispering promises of understanding. In that fragile moment, an opening existed, a blend of every person's story finally acknowledged, a shared path toward understanding illuminated before us. Tomorrow, we rise again, I whispered softly, around us the final echoes fading into a quiet hope, and just like that, the world that had once felt so heavy began to feel like a symphony. As the final chords danced among the shadows, I held the last note dearly, knowing that together, we could forge a melody that would shape our futures, transforming pain into harmony. In unison, we took our next steps forward, hearts holding open the potential for healing, both for ourselves and for others. The melody of reconciliation played on, ringing deeply in our souls, weaving a new narrative into the tapestry of our lives. For in that moment, I understood, sometimes being lost was merely a sign that one was on the brink of being found. And as darkness withdrew, dawn ignited behind the horizon, spilling golden light across the land, signaling the end of a long battle yet the beginning of a beautiful, uncharted journey.